Hi, everyone. Dr. Liz here. Welcome to the Hypnotize Me podcast. I'm glad you're here, glad you're listening and learning, and hopefully it will help you with your journey along the way. I am a psychotherapist with a specialty in anxiety, insomnia, and deeper emotional healing. Hypnosis is one of the tools in my toolbox that I use to help people feel better and to help people be better. I do work all over the world. Please feel free to reach out and contact me if you would like some help. I've been an entrepreneur for most of my adult life, built an award-winning company, sold it, and then focused mainly on my private practice. That gives you a unique perspective, especially my ability to work with people in business at all kinds of levels. Before I go, if you'd like to support the podcast, you can go and subscribe to the newsletter. And you'll get free hypnosis downloads that you can listen to immediately. Another way is to buy one of the downloads that I have for sale. I only have a couple up there, but they're good ones. They've stood the test of time. I made the decision to not run ads during my podcast because I really do see it as an act of service. I completely respect people who do have ads on their podcast, but it's just not my path. All right, everyone, enjoy the episode. And I hope to see you back here soon. Hi, everyone. Today we have Cristiana Saia. Is it Saia?
Saia, yep.
Okay, great. I'm glad I said it right. I made a guess. To talk about pet loss and grief. And I found her through the Lap of Love. It's lapoflove.com. And they offer all kinds of services. And I found them because I wanted an at-home euthanasia of my dog that I had had for 10 years, little Zoey dog, which if you've listened to the podcast before, you've heard me talk about her. But then I discovered they offered all kinds of support groups, some of them free, some of them extremely low cost. And I found that they were really supportive of me through my grief process. So Cristiana is here to help us talk about pet loss in particular. Well, let's start with how you got into this work.
Hi, I'm really honored to be here. And although for the reason that brought you to find Lap of Love, I'm really grateful that you did reach out, because I think that sometimes there's just not a lot of airtime for pet loss. It's a desensitized grief. But how I got here, I think that just kind of to keep a long story short, going through my own grief experience in my early 20s really made me learn firsthand that people are kind of uncomfortable with grief. And a lot of people will say things that aren't so helpful. And really, what we often need is somebody who is not afraid to be like in the not in the sadness with us, but be with us while we're sad and not try to quote unquote fix it or add silver linings. And just, through that and having the right support, being very privileged to have the right support through that. And then through the years, recognizing that I am comfortable sitting in that space. And so, I found Lap of Love. The pandemic happened, and I think everybody went through this existential crisis of reevaluating where they're at. And so I reached out to Lap of Love to apply just to, be one of the people who answer the phone and make appointments. And from there, I added on to my continuing education after, I got my degree, my undergrad degree at University of Florida, and then some continuing education in grief support and more specifically pet loss support. And we founded the pet loss support team at Lap of Love because Lap of Love, as you said, really people think of it oftentimes first as in-home euthanasia and hospice, but we do have now our own department really just for honoring that grief, and you don't have to have used our services to, just reach out and get some of that support. So I've been doing this with Lap of Love for about 5 years, and it's been just, an incredible honor.
Fantastic. Great. Do you find that people seem to be more comfortable with pet loss than like human loss? like talking about
I think
it? I mean, I asked this, I'll
yeah.
give you background. I heard you mention
Okay.
like people are really uncomfortable with grief. And in general, I think that's so true. I volunteer at the Jacksonville Humane Society every Sunday in the cat area. And I cannot tell you how many times within a 2 hour period I will hear, we just lost our cat, and they'll tell me all about the cat, or they lost a dog. And so I've been surprised about how comfortable people are sharing that actually. So do you think it differs?
Well, I think that the main difference I'm hearing in that example is people want to talk about their grief.
Yes.
They really do. And sometimes people will hesitate to engage with people who are grieving or ask about it because they're afraid they might say the wrong thing, or I don't want to, I don't want to make them sad, or, whatever
Mhm.
that might be. But, surveys time and time again have shown people want to talk about their grief and their loved ones, but they just want a place that they can do that without judgment or
Mhm.
without, making somebody else squeamish. Um, and as far as pet loss goes, I think that sometimes it depends on if it's a pet person or not. There are people who
Mhm.
I think get it, right? I think we know
Yeah.
that. But we already don't have the best grief etiquette in general in our society. And
Yeah.
I think that sometimes when somebody doesn't quote unquote get it, what
Mhm.
happens is maybe they are less like squeamish about it, but almost more nonchalant about it, which can
Oh,
be
true. Yeah.
equally as hurtful of not really treating it um, as massive of a loss and impact in our lives as it truly is.
That is true. I have found that. Like you would never hear someone say, "Why don't you just go find another child? Can you go adopt another child?" Like never. Or can you imagine that would be so awful for someone to say? But yeah, when you lose a dog or a cat, or I mean, there's lots of animals other than dogs and cats that people lose. My older daughter had little mice, and oh my gosh, mice live about 2 years
Yep.
if you're lucky.
Hmm.
So she would cry and cry during the first ones. And then she's like, I sort of got used to it, having to put them down. But there's all kinds of pets that people
Yeah.
grieve over. But yeah, often you would hear, are you going to get another dog? And it's like, yeah, you hear that often versus you would never hear that with human loss.
Yeah. Or even just the confusion of
Mhm.
somebody not even like, telling somebody, oh, I'm having a hard day, I just put my dog down, or, insert loved one. And sometimes just the confusion and the non-validation of that.
Yes.
Because sometimes there are people who maybe they don't have to have gone through it themselves, but the recognition
Hmm.
is important, and we don't always get that in pet loss.
True. Very true. Yeah, I cried for months, like every day after I put my dog down. And that was January of 2025. And then my cat unexpectedly died in April of 2025, like just a couple months later. And we're recording this in August. It'll probably air in September of 2025. But it was months where I was like, oh my gosh, I miss her so much. And I couldn't look at pictures of her at first, where some people have the opposite reaction. They want to look at pictures a lot, and
Yeah.
that's a comfort for them. But for me, I couldn't. But then I gradually got to the place where it wasn't a daily kind of thing for me, and I could look at pictures. I actually ordered one and framed it, and that was really helpful for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, people have different reactions, but often it is minimized with pets.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And people, I think, also want to push us along.
Yeah.
Um, because it's like you said, eventually you were able to, find that photo and frame it.
Mhm.
But it's one of those things where we really need a lot of grace and honestly trust that we will get there, right? Support and
Mhm.
trust that we will get there without people being like, oh, wow, it's been a week and, she's still crying or whatever that might be. It's just a matter of every person, what we need in grief. Sometimes there's equal and opposite, like you said, with the pictures, but
Yeah.
that's what it is just like offering patience, grace, and trust that somebody will get there if they, especially if they're supported through it.
Hmm. Can you talk some about the guilt or questions that come up when someone does have to euthanize a dog, even if it's planned. I found myself and I had a friend that went through it pretty closely after me who had to put her dog down too. We actually got our dogs around the same time.
Mhm.
And so we both had guilt, even knowing this is the right decision. And
Mhm.
actually, Lap of Love helped me after Zoe's death because it was the only website I found that actually had a questionnaire that said, oh, whoa, with these symptoms, you should be having some serious talks with your vet. I don't think they say directly, you should put the dog down, but it's really like, you should talk to your vet. Whereas I had downloaded questionnaires and you're supposed to rate their quality of life. And I never felt like I got any kind of real solid answer. And I was filling out this questionnaire because I had some guilt afterwards. And it said, it had different levels that it gives. And that helped me feel validated. Like I did make the right decision at the right time.
Yeah.
So often there's a timing issue there that I think people feel guilty for. But can you talk about that from an expert opinion?
Yeah, I want to start first by like this idea of the right time.
Mm-hmm.
I'll kind of take this idea from my colleague Kelly, who I believe you've met in a group before.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
She's brought up this idea of when we think of the right time, we think of let's say another scenario. I finally found the right guy, I got the right job, I finally find the right apartment. There's usually like a good feeling attached to it,
Uh-huh.
right? But we don't really get that when it comes to death and grief.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes there's that expectation that it's gonna feel like the right time. Um, and I think that that's kind of just an important to differentiate when just that word in our head has that connection to it, where we want that feeling.
Yeah.
And so there's also this idea that our vets use a lot of called the golden window,
Okay.
in which they're at a place where their quality of life is not going to get better,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not actively suffering yet, right? Where it's not like
Mm-hmm.
an emergency or a trip to the emergency room. And that's a really difficult one to see. One, because our pets can't talk to us.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice if we could just say, "Hey, buddy, like, are you really tired?" Or,
Mm-hmm.
and but of course, it's like for me, I've asked that, and then what do? You're talking to them, so they perk up,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I think a few things is recognizing that even if they are really, really unwell, um, we are their people. We're their favorite person,
Mm-hmm.
So if you're really sick and your favorite person walks into the room, even if you're not feeling well, you're going to lift your head up. You're going to be like, "Hey, I
Yeah.
missed you," even if it's just
Mm-hmm.
been an hour in the other room. And
Mm-hmm.
that can be confusing. That can be really confusing. So I think that the communication aspect,
Mm-hmm.
and we're so intuitive with our pets. I pride
Yeah.
myself on knowing when my dog has to go to the bathroom without even, I'm like, oh, I know what that look is. And we start to kind of question that intuition as we
Mm-hmm.
get closer to the end. It feels less like obvious, and that confidence gets rocked a little bit. So
Okay.
I
Got
think
it.
that really makes a difference. And then as far as the guilt of euthanasia,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, on paper, totally makes sense.
Right.
Absolutely. Yet we still have that questioning. And I'll speak to myself. I think I shared with
Mm-hmm.
you. We just put our eldest, I always call my dogs my firstborn sons. We put our
Mm-hmm.
eldest to rest last week. And me being my focus is anticipatory grief, in my work. And so even knowing all the things, I had a split second moment. I'm like, oh, you know, I don't know. I don't think there's a way to not feel that.
Ah,
But
got it. Yeah.
for me, I think that it's this idea that when we make a list of our most cherished loved ones,
Mm-hmm.
um, the majority of us are going to have a lot of humans on there. Even if
Mm-hmm.
it's just like our foundation, right? Our parents, our grown-ups, whoever was there, just recognizing the people that we call for. Those were grown-ups, those were humans.
Yeah.
And so when we have our pet, they're going to be at the top of that list. They're
Yeah.
on that list. And differentiating that they're not human can
Hmm.
be triggering for some people because there's this association that, well, if I mention that they're not human, that makes them like on a lower tier.
Mm.
And I think it's important to recognize that no, it does not put them on a lower tier, that there's a different social contract, you
Oh,
know?
yeah. Yeah. They're sort of on a higher tier to me because they're not human.
Exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I'm closer with my dog than honestly most pretty much everybody. Sometimes my husband and now my child is, they're right there with them. But
Yeah, right. I was taking this graduate school class at one point. I had to go back after I'd graduated, about 10 years after I graduated, take some classes just to get my license. And I was in this class where we were, I don't know why the exercise was this, but it was like, okay, who would you rescue first from the fire? Common question.
mhm.
And I remember the woman beside me who was like in her, let's say, late 30s. She had 3 kids, a husband, and she was debating between the dog and the husband.
Yep.
This is before I had my dog. I was like, that is so crazy. But looking back now, I can still look back, and that's probably been, I don't know, 15 years or something. And I'm like, oh, I totally get it. Once I have my
You
dog,
get it now. Yeah, exactly.
it's like, I'm pretty
That's how
sure I'd pick the
meaningful.
dog.
Exactly. And one thing that we don't do for our humans is choose euthanasia for them,
Yeah,
right? We don't make
most
that
people.
decision for our
Yeah,
humans.
right.
And so, because we associate this bond, this trust, this responsibility with
Hmm.
our closest loved ones, which are often human,
Hmm.
um, that, with our pets, it feels unnatural, even if we know it's our responsibility, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think it's just important to recognize that feeling is so normal,
Mhm.
even if logically, like we can't think our way out of that feeling. Oftentimes, we can give
Ah,
ourselves
got it.
grace. You know,
Yes. Yeah. I definitely tried to think my way out of it. Yeah.
right? Because then what happens is we have a lot of shoulds. A client once said, like, oh, we need to stop shoulding on ourselves,
Right. Yeah.
right? And so it's
Hmm.
like, oh, I feel this guilt, but I know that this is the right thing. So I'm just gonna kind of say, okay, you feel this, and
Yeah.
can I be okay with recognizing I feel this, and at the same time, I know that I'm doing the most loving, compassionate thing, even if it doesn't feel that way.
Yeah. So it's holding the both. Like these are going to be really hard, uncomfortable feelings. And at the same time, I can have the inner knowing that I'm doing my best here. This is
Yeah,
the time that's chosen. This is it.
right.
Yeah.
One of our last responsibilities, if if that's the way that it works out for us. Not everybody gets that opportunity to say goodbye. On the flip side, I've also had lots of people have immense guilt for not being able to make that decision, and for them
Yes.
waiting too long, or there
Yeah.
being an accident, right? So I think
Mhm.
that the guilt comes up no matter what. We find, us humans, we love to find a way for it because that gives us some control. Says
Mhm.
we could have done this different. We could, however I'm feeling right now, it could be different if only I had waited, or not waited, or
Yeah.
done this treatment, But
Mhm.
with our humans, we also don't decide what they eat every day. We don't decide when they go
Mhm.
potty. We don't decide, who they're going to play. Maybe when our children are young, but even then
Yeah.
they grow up and eventually start deciding those things for themselves.
Right. Yeah.
And we don't second guess ourselves too often, when we do that, recognizing that, like, yeah, it's their job to love us, and their
Mhm.
job to just like live in this moment, remind us what that's like. And it's our job to make the hard decisions, and they
Yeah.
trust us for that.
Yes, true. Yeah. There is a famous author, and I'm blanking on her name. I'm not great with author names. I'm better with like book titles, but she writes the book Three Dog Night. And she talks about how difficult it was that she waited too long with one of her dogs. And so then the dog was in immense pain and she was there when it passed. But yeah, she had the guilt on the other side. I didn't put him down, and then he had to go through that.
One thing that we talk about a lot in our anticipatory grief support group that we offer
Mhm.
is being kind to your future self.
Oh, yeah. And for
Look,
those that don't know, anticipatory grief is when you know you're going to have grief. You know the animal is going to die or the person is going to die. And so you're anticipating that. Like some of that is called pre grieving, right? Like we're
yes.
going to move into that process and start to process it before the pet or the person passes away, even.
Yes, and thank you. I forget sometimes that that's just something that we really don't even think about so much of the time. And then I'll talk to somebody and I'll talk about anticipatory grief and like, oh, that's what I was going through. And
Yeah.
we don't have the language.
Right.
And that's what makes it hard is not having the language sometimes for some really complex experiences.
Yeah.
But we talk about being kind to your future self and really being willing to ask yourself, okay, a year from now, looking back, what will I feel more okay about? Not that we don't have to like any of the options,
Hmm.
but will I be more okay with knowing that knowing that I gave him this kind of death. I say him because I think him with my boys.
Hmm.
Or and that maybe he could have had some good days. And
Hmm.
there's the knowing and the not knowing. We sacrifice one, and on the flip side, there's the okay. Well, I'm going to make sure they have every single last good day and good moment. That's what matters most to me. But also, when we decide that, we are not 100% we don't have the control of, well, I know how they're going to pass and what that's going to look like.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and the answer could look different for everybody, right?
Hmm.
So I'm not here to answer what the end of life decision should be, but it's just a question being kind to your future self. What can they look back on and live with and feel more okay with?
Hmm.
Can kind of be a decision, a thought when making the decision for euthanasia. And are we getting there?
Okay, got it. Yeah, I see that definitely. Like for my little dog, she was really suffering at the end, which is when I finally made the call. But then it got delayed. I scheduled it. My daughter woke up and said, "Oh my God, no! Like all my friends want to say goodbye to her. I want to say goodbye to her." And so then we rescheduled it for about 2 days later. We had planned for her to have everything that she wanted to eat, like all her special treats, because she'd been on a special diet for so long, or else she'd get diarrhea. And so that dog never got treats like the last 2 years of her life, the poor thing. But it's like the day before, then she got everything she wanted. She got her favorite walks, she got all this stuff. So it's like, yes, those days are really hard though, thinking about it. And I know for me, it was probably a year and a half, me making that decision and
Mhm.
thinking about it. And so for some people, it's a very long period if their dog is getting this diagnosis and okay, it's downhill from here.
Yeah.
I did have it was like a client's boyfriend or something who the minute the vet said your dog has cancer, he put him down that day. Whereas other people choose to treat it, other people choose to not treat it, but wait it out some. And so it is different for everyone. But his goal was like, I don't want her to suffer, period. This is like most compassionate act he could do. And
Mhm.
so you hear these different stories. I'm sure you've heard so many because there's hundreds of people who attend your groups.
Mhm.
There's also the individual counseling that
Mhm.
Level Love offers. Then there's a couple of tiers, right? There's the free groups, and then there's a paid group.
Yeah.
I was very impressed with some of the specific ones.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. That was
like
one thing that was really important to us to get some of those. And I do want to just mention we want to be very transparent. And so
mhm.
we never try to refer to ourselves as like offering counseling.
Okay.
Um, so we call ourselves grief coaches because
Okay, got it.
just we want to be just really transparent. There are some moments where somebody deserves that additional support with a mental
Mhm.
health counselor. It's a very specific title that you have to, kind of
Yes.
be careful with throwing around.
Right.
But it was really important to us to get some of those, kind of specialty groups in there because pet
Mhm.
loss is already a bit of a disenfranchised grief, which is,
Mhm.
any grief that is not really validated, as we talked about earlier, by society. But then there are some people who would tell us, I came to group today and it was really lovely, but I just felt like I was the only one there. Everybody was telling their story of this beautiful loss. And,
Mhm.
I had this really traumatic sudden loss,
Yeah.
or I was in a group and everybody was talking about how much they love their dogs and going on walks and stuff. And, and somebody mentioned how dogs are just different, but my cat was equally as important to me. So
Yeah.
we just kind of wanted to offer that space of other people who, really understand the more specifics to that the layers that go with that particular loss.
Yes. Well, I think it is impressive. Like the offering is impressive. And I felt like it really spoke to me because
Hmm.
there was one for newer loss, like under 2 months, I think it is,
Hmm.
versus one that was like extended 2 years. And I don't know if I ended up in a cat group, but there's definitely one that I attended that I think was mostly cats.
Hmm.
So it is a different flavor to it. I've had both. I love both. But yeah, then I mean, I did have two cats that would walk the dog with me actually, but that's
Yeah.
unusual. Cats don't usually go for walks. But yeah, it felt different to me for sure
Hmm.
to have those different offerings and to know also that they're available. And then
Yeah.
there's the general,
Yeah.
grief.
And then we also have our behavioral euthanasia group, which is
Oh
um,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that one is, we don't have it as often,
Uh-huh.
but it is important for us to keep that group going because that has such complex layers. And I say different
Yes.
layers because we're not here to compare, but just recognizing that sometimes with the different experiences, we want somebody who has similar, layers that we have to work through in grief.
Yes. Can you tell people what that is? Some people won't know.
Yeah, so behavioral euthanasia is when we have to make the such difficult decision to say goodbye to one of our pets who is struggling with, severe like mental health or behavioral issues.
Hmm.
And there can be, even in like the pet community, there can sometimes be people who um, will, pass judgment or not know the whole
Yeah.
story, right? Because I think
Hmm.
all of us have heard it. Oh, it's the owner, it's not the dog, right?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so I think that it's important that we have that kind of really safe space,
Hmm.
because one of the really complex issues with behavioral euthanasia is the sense of everybody talks about how perfect their pet was,
Hmm.
and how there was just this trust and they're always there for them. And when we have to like have a behavioral issue, sometimes it is derived from like a something neurological,
Hmm.
but it can feel, and I always say it feels, but it is not the same as, let's say, a toxic relationship, right?
Hmm.
Where, oh, I can fix them. I just have to do this one more thing. I just have to make sure that they don't get triggered. I just have to, do this. And sometimes our lives can get incredibly small
Yeah.
trying to do
Yeah.
that. Um, and it can feel almost like this sense of, when we have an insecure attachment,
Hmm.
and so there's a lot of kind of grappling with that. And then also recognizing that, their brains don't work the same way that ours do, right? They can't
Yeah.
go to therapy. They can't figure out, like, why is my fight or flight being triggered by this right now?
Yeah.
And so it's just an important to have that space for them to kind of, be honest about their experiences and also say, and I love them and they were the best and they were so sweet 98% of the time, and this is really hard.
Yeah. I had a dog that I had to put down before Zoey that I had adopted. I knew the dog had problems, but I had trained dogs in my 20s for about 2 years. And I thought, no, this will be okay. Like, this is a good dog. We'll do it. It's exactly like, can I tell you how many books I read again? And then he ended up biting someone in the dog park. And it was in my neighborhood. It was like a neighborhood dog park. And there's a neighbor sitting next to me who was a lawyer. And he's
No.
like, well, there goes your kid's college education. And luckily she did not sue me, the other woman,
Yeah.
but it was such an awful decision. And I knew if I took him back to the Humane Society. I had him a couple of months and I worked with him. He couldn't walk around the block even at first. And finally he could walk around the block and made all this progress. But I knew if he goes back and he had bit somebody, they would put him down. And it was so hard to make that decision. It really was. And I wrote a letter, actually. I could not talk. I was just bawling when I took him in, and I just handed him the letter over and said goodbye to him. But yeah, it's so hard. I hadn't thought about it in years, like a long time. Oh, some feelings are coming up. It's really hard.
Yeah. And what a thoughtful way to just allow yourself that space to write the letter, say what you need to say, so that you can just make sure that you're in a place where you can do what, and clearly a lot of thought went into it. It's different than what people consider a convenience euthanasia.
Yes.
It is
Yeah.
much different. And it also is a way that we take back some kind of control, because if we don't make this decision, there's a possibility of them, getting taken by animal control,
Yes.
and it happening that way, right?
Yes.
Or them something more severe happening.
Yes. Yeah.
So although there's that guilt and it's so hard, it's also
Mm-hmm.
recognizing like, okay, maybe it still is, the kindest thing, because there are worse things than a good death.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. It is. I think the purpose of the group, the intent, that's so wonderful that's there because there are so many nuances to it.
Yeah.
And they are different layers than
Mhm.
a dog who got sick, or even one who died traumatically that you didn't expect, like the cat that we had that died. And it comes up in all kinds of different ways. Yeah, depending on their death and the decisions you have to make around it. Mm-hmm.
What's your kitty's name?
Susu, Suit Sprite, but Susu for short.
Yeah. I always encourage, I was like, let's, we always want to say their name as much as we can.
Yeah, she's Susu, and we have her ashes and her little favorite toy actually on our mantle right now, and her paw print. And then Zoey was actually buried in a friend's backyard, and I didn't get her paw print. I wish I had, but I didn't get her paw print. I don't know why I turned it down. No idea. But I have some of her fur. And so that gives me some comfort. I actually do take it out sometimes. She had this really soft, she was like a poodle shih tzu mix. So she had this really soft, we used to call
Mhm.
it her mermaid tail, So we have that. And then the dog I had to put down because of the biting was Nugget. He
Yeah.
was like a lab and sort of that orangey color. So like a
Mhm.
chicken nugget. They called the
Oh,
girls named him Nugget.
that's so cute. That's
It
appropriate.
was cute. Yeah. He was sweet, but he had problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your dog's name?
The one who passed last week, his name was Troy Boy.
Uh-huh.
He 14 and a half years. And so yeah, it's one of those things where I was thinking is sometimes as coaches, when we speak about these things in groups, it can sound like, we're speaking so nonchalantly, like it's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, just, tell yourself this or have this dialogue. Um, and even like us coaches go through all of these things that we talk about and talk people through every day.
Yeah.
And just because you have the tools, sometimes there's this expectation, especially if anybody's in the helping profession, there's
Mm-hmm.
this expectation of like, well, I have the tools, I know these things, I should be able to be okay. We think ourselves out of it. And I think it's just a matter of recognizing like, okay, yeah, I can know all this stuff, but I'm not immune to being like a human being with
Yeah.
love, loving attachments.
Yes.
And it's a process,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it just helps to know that, all right, the tools are there and I'll use them when I get to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And your other dog is alive?
So yeah, that's Leo, little Leo.
Yeah.
He's his little brother. They were like the great, like the kind of grumpy older brother, Troy was, and Leo
I
kind
love
of
it.
just like, hammered his friendship. I always say like he forced his friendship on him. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so, yeah, it was sweet I was looking back at some photos this weekend and really, we always joked about how he did that, but then like seeing like, wow, over the years, they really were much closer than maybe I gave them credit for. So,
Mm-hmm.
little Leo needs a lot of love and support right now.
Aw, that's sweet. Can
Yeah.
you talk some about the actual process of grief? Like what can people expect? Is there something like I know the 5 stages have been debunked a long time ago
Yeah.
of like
Thank you.
people.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
Yes, right. There's no 5 stages, people. Okay?
Yeah.
You have all of those feelings and at different times, and but you're certainly not moving through those stages. Like
Right.
Elizabeth Kubler-Ross even said that herself, but somehow it still is being played in TV shows and whatever, right? So can you talk about though some of the process that has been researched and brought to light around grief?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And those 5 stages, a lot of people don't know this, so I kind of like to be like, oh, like fun fact of the day. It was really more so research done on people dying and their own anticipatory grief. So before the fact about their
Mm,
own death, that grief that they're
mm,
having for their own lives.
mm.
And so when we put it in that context, things like bargaining make a lot more sense.
Yes.
Um, but, as far as like, I think, it is different. I don't know, I can't say like, hey, expect this, but there's a lot of commonalities, there's a lot
Mhm.
of intersection. What we kind of refer to more, and there's a few different models of this,
Yeah.
is more of like tasks in grief
Mm.
that one kind of
Mhm.
needs to allow themselves to go through and do to get to a place where they can find a place of reconciliation. I don't love the word like acceptance, mostly because
Mhm.
it's so loaded.
Yeah.
But reconciliation, where we can kind of have a sense of, of just finding meaning of like, okay, what, not meaning of their death, but meaning of their life, the impact.
Mhm.
What this, it's like, okay, we don't have to say everything happens for a reason, but it happened. So now what? What am I going to do
Yeah.
with this
Uh-huh.
experience? And that's not something that's going to happen right away,
Mhm.
usually. But some of those tasks, and again, there's a few different models, and it's in no particular order. And sometimes we put one on the back burner, or we have to come back to it. Is going to be one, like acknowledging the reality of the death,
Mhm.
right? Which denial, as you know, it's not the same thing as like delusion. We know,
Yeah.
obviously, that our loved one passed, but there's this kind of way of where somebody says, I don't want to get their ashes back. It'll make it real,
Yeah.
or I don't want to look at pictures. That'll make it real, things like
Mhm.
that. So, acknowledging the reality and ways that we can do that is by talking about it,
Mhm.
telling their story, doing that active mourning.
Yeah.
Um, there's also, leaning on our support and finding support. Sometimes we don't have a great support system around us. And that's why we
Mhm.
reach out to places like, the pet loss support team or our
Mhm.
doctor or our community of faith,
Yeah.
making sure that we're finding that balance of solitude and social support. So we're
Mhm.
not moving too far into isolation or distraction.
Mhm.
Although some healthy distraction is okay. We can't be present with things that when we're consumed by something.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so there is acknowledging the reality of the death. There is keeping them with you through memories,
Mhm.
right? So sometimes people just want to shut that down and not like allow themselves like just kind of move forward.
Yeah.
And just recognizing that, through memories is a way that we can keep them with us because,
Mhm.
the they impact our lives. For me, I truly believe our pets help shape who we are,
Oh yeah.
and shape who we want to be.
Yes.
And so, just by keeping that memory of that connection is really important. We can find our own ways to do that.
Mhm.
A big one, especially in pet loss, is readjusting our self identity.
Oh yeah. You and I talked about this before the recording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like
and
I have a hard time. I'm a dog owner, but I don't have a dog right now. But I keep ordering stuff from from a website that has dog merch.
Yep.
It's like, what am I doing? But it's like,
Yeah.
no, I love dogs, and I know this helps the medical costs for that, organization, whatever. But it's like, yeah, it's an identity shift. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's identity shift both like internally and externally. So
Yeah.
I know we talked a bit about like how our identity is it can be so tied up into like our bond with them and,
Mm-hmm.
just our connection with them, with the anchor in our lives that they've been through us, with all of these changes
Yes.
and
Yeah.
things like that. That moment where, like, let's say we're at our worst, right? We've all had moments where it's like, looking back, could have handled that better,
Yeah.
right? But the thing is, we look at our pets and they look at us like, yeah, I love you today, just like I loved you yesterday, and I'm going to give you as much side eye and attitude today, depending on the pet.
Yeah. Right.
But it's also like externally too. To some people, you are, that person with the cute little dog that walks around the block,
Yep.
or, the person with the cat who always like jumps on the table during Zoom meetings and
Yeah.
everybody. You might be a social group that you meet with at the dog park. And so that also is a complete adjustment where people might sit and ask you like, hey, where are they?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think just kind of acknowledging that there's a part of that that will always be at our core. They
Mm-hmm.
often are a mirror to us, and
Yeah.
they don't. I always say like I hear so often, oh, they gave me courage, and it's like courage is not a currency. They
Mm-hmm.
made you realize that you can be courageous, and what a gift. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
what a gift for somebody to see us so authentically. And
Yes.
so it's not taking away from what they've given to us.
Mm-hmm.
So recognizing all of those things are still true,
Mm-hmm.
and now trying to figure out, okay, like, who am I? What does being a dog mom mean to me now? Maybe it means volunteering for a little bit,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. Okay. So, working through like different, it sounds like areas, like task areas, that type of thing, where they come, you're saying on someone's own timeline. There's no
Right.
timeline on that.
Yeah.
Of
We
like,
refer to Dr. Alan Wolfelt's
mm-hmm.
model a lot. And like I said, there's a few, but they all kind of touch on the same idea of it being more of like tasks, things that we kind of have to give ourselves permission to do. And all of the feelings can happen at once.
Yeah.
So it's not like, hey, this is what to expect to feel. There's normal things like the guilt we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like things to help us actually process our grief and like allow it to be a companion at some point in our life, which I
Mm-hmm.
know anybody who might be in really early grief right now, that might make them want to, throw their phone or whatever they're listening to across the room.
Yeah.
But just allow us to realize like your grief is yours to keep.
Mm-hmm.
We don't try to take it from you here at Lap of Love or at the Pet Loss
Mm-hmm.
Support Team, because it's paved in love.
Yeah.
But it is a matter of, okay, learning how to live with it.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. And knowing it's going to change over time. I
Absolutely.
think that at the beginning, that felt almost impossible to me. But I knew, like feeling wise, that felt impossible. I knew intellectually, like this will change over time. I'd lost pets before, two cats, but the dog that I mentioned. So it's like, and that doesn't count childhood. It's like all in adulthood. So,
Right.
oh my gosh, so I start to think about my kids' childhood. We had several sets of mice and all kinds of stuff. The snails were the easiest, I will say. Snails were the easiest pets.
Yeah, I was a hamster girl myself, and they also do not last
They
very long.
don't, right?
They
Yeah.
really don't. But
Yeah. And our
yeah.
kids' grief. I mean, I remember it's like, oh my gosh, sometimes my kids' grief was so hard for me as a
Mhm.
parent. I remember, oh my gosh, the most like awful wail you could hear from Eva when she was 5 and she discovered that her little hamster had died. And
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
a cat
That's
got it. It was very sad. But
it
it's
is.
like, oh my gosh, my heart is breaking, for my child. And actually, she had to put a chicken down, one of the school chickens, right before she graduated. That was about a year and a half ago. And I took her, and that was really hard. Yeah. And I actually told her it's one of the saddest things I've ever been through. And then she's like, is it worse than this, Mom? Like, was it worse than this? I was like, yeah, it was close. Like, it is really
Right.
close.
In this
Yeah.
moment, this is my truth. And yes,
Right.
in this moment, I would say
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you bring up a great point is that it's forever evolving. Our needs
Mhm.
in grief, does kind of change over time, and it doesn't make it less than, or
Yeah.
but it just is they change, and that's one task that you'll see in every model is a sense of finding meaning.
Mhm.
Um, and early on, that again is really just can be triggering to hear.
Yeah.
But because it is something that usually happens as we allow ourselves to do that, like morning work. Think morning work allows us to kind of take charge of our grief a little bit and say, well, I'm crying every day anyways. So at least when I light this candle, yeah, it might make me cry, but at least I know I'm going to, right?
True. Yeah.
It's just because we feel so out of control. So it's taking charge just a little bit, and
Yeah.
that can help us get to that place of,
Oh, I love
finding
that.
meaning.
Yes. Yeah. It's interesting. I couldn't draw my dog until after she passed away. Like I have no idea why spiritually. I like we're a big art household. And
Yeah.
so my daughter would draw her, my older one, in all kinds of different like funny things that would all make us laugh. Like Zoey is a chef and Zoey is like a
Oh,
mermaid and but I never could draw her myself. Like I just couldn't capture her. And then after she died, I started drawing her, where it's like I send them to my daughter. She's on her own, lives on her own now, and she was like, "Oh my God, you totally got her now." But it was the reason that came up for me is you're talking about the different tasks, right? The different ways we move through grief, and that was a shift for me to be able to draw her and laugh instead of draw her
mhm.
and cry,
Yeah.
because she was always a very funny dog that made us laugh, and she looked funny. She had two eyes that went the different ways, and so it's like just drawing her and like sharing that laughter with my
Hmm.
daughter instead of feeling like, oh, that's a shift for me, instead of crying about her.
Yeah.
So yeah, all these different ways that we move through it.
And
Hmm.
that doesn't mean you'll never cry again, right?
Oh
When it
yeah,
comes to
no, I
there.
cry when I talk to you about it before. I
Right.
cried about Nugget. I haven't cried about Nugget in like 12 years or something.
Right. So it's
Probably.
not this like, okay,
Yeah.
done with that part of grief. And it's
Yeah.
like, it's really getting comfortable with letting different feelings coexist.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so some reassurance there of whatever comes up is okay. And there's not an abnormal. It's all normal.
No, yeah,
Mhm.
no, definitely. And
Yeah. And
I love that
also,
idea of the different versions of Zoe. I feel like that could be like a kid's coloring book one day.
oh, so cute.
Yeah.
There's one where she drew us like holding hands,
Oh,
like I mean, super funny. Sort of like I'm trying to think of the little video game. Oh, Animal Crossing.
mm-hmm.
So she draws in like that style.
Oh, yeah.
So funny. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
perfect.
Just both of them always made us laugh. So yeah. Well, we are coming to the end of our time here, and I hope we have helped some people around grief and pet loss. And so, can you please tell them how to find Lap of Love, or if they'd like to work with you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you can go to lapoflove.com. We also have our own resource page, which it's like a different URL that in the days of technology, you never memorize anything, do you? So let me just
Yeah.
pull it off because it is pull it up. So it's pretty easy. You can actually schedule online any
Yeah.
services that you'd like. We also offer, again, I don't think I touched on it, but that one-on-one support. So
Mhm.
if you just kind of want to have the support of one of the coaches, maybe tell your story in depth, especially if there's maybe some like traumatic things you need to work through. Might be better to do it in a one-on-one than in a
Mhm.
group kind of thing. And then we also have our 6-week course that we
That's right.
offer, for
Yeah.
people who are maybe a little ready to get curious about
Mhm.
about their grief. So you would just go to petloss.lapoflove.com, and all of our services are listed there. You can sign up online, and that's just helpful because sometimes we can't sleep and it's the middle of the night, and it's
Yeah.
like, okay, is there a group tomorrow?
Yeah.
Is there somebody I can talk to tomorrow? And you can just kind of get that taken care of there. And so if need be, they can always give us a call as well. And we are usually in sessions,
Mm-hmm.
but, to like leave us a voicemail. And we can always call them back and help get them set up. And so that phone number is one. 855-352-5683. And so that's
Can you
always an
repeat
option
that
because,
for a moment? Can you repeat it?
yeah, absolutely. So it's 855-352-5683.
And that will be in the show notes as well as the website. Both of
Mhm.
the URLs will be
Perfect.
in the show notes. And even if your podcast player doesn't show you the show notes, like mine doesn't for some reason, so odd, but it will be on my website. So all the podcasts published to my website, and you can always find the episode and find the links there.
Perfect. Yeah, because not everybody is computer savvy, and we get that. So if
Yeah.
somebody needs to call, and we can walk them through, get them signed up, and yeah, it's just an incredible honor. We have coaches here almost every day of the week.
Mm-hmm.
We're a small team, so sometimes somebody needs to go on vacation or have an appointment or something, but we really try to get back to you as soon as possible and just show up for you. Sometimes that's all we need is somebody to show up.
Yes, thank you. And I loved all the different offerings. Like there were some weekends, there were some evenings, there was some
Mhm.
daytimes. I think that does make it accessible to a lot more people. So thank you so much for sharing your story and your wisdom with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Dr. Liz. And we're always here. If you ever want to reach out, or just if anybody has any questions, reach out. And it's been a privilege. It's been awesome speaking with you.
I hope you truly enjoyed today's episode. Remember that you can get free hypnosis downloads over at my website, drlizhypnosis.com, DRLIZ hypnosis.com. I work all over the world doing hypnosis. So if you're interested in working with me, please schedule a free consultation over at my website, and we'll see what your goals are and if I can be of service to you in helping you reach them. Finally, if you liked today's episode, please subscribe to the podcast or tell a friend. That way, more and more people learn about the power of hypnosis. All right, everyone, have a wonderful week. Peace. This podcast is not mental health treatment, nor should it replace mental health treatment. If you need therapy or hypnotherapy, please seek treatment from a trained professional.